Today, mum's love, or a mother's love, and the love of life, the flower of life. So, I've been doing a little bit of research as usual, and come across the fact that heavy metals are not passed on through the breast milk from our mothers. I mean, that just astounded and blew me away that a mother has so much love that she would provide beautiful nourishment for her child and filter out the heavy metals. And because I've recently been removing a lot of heavy metals, and the emotional effects at quite the high level of homeostasis are quite significant. But it's okay, we're able to witness and just deal with it and get it out of the body. Just notice the emotional effects of these things. Because there's been some sharp pains being released from different parts of my brain. And thyroid's here, but the thyroid controller is down here. And that's been working overtime. So we're taking measures. And so for people who don't know about these things, and as a mum, she's too busy taking care of her children and doing as much loving as she can. But she's taking on that extra heavy metals. And the emotional effects are quite significant. Especially if, mum has taken on the responsibility of having a beautiful child, taking on those extra heavy metals, and then not knowing how to deal with it. And there are plenty of heavy metals in the air, the water, the food, everything. It's ridiculous. Many solutions for these things. And so if she has 2, 3 or 4 children, well, if they've taken on all of those heavy metals without having the diet and lifestyle measures to deal with this effectively, that's a lot of toxic heavy metals. And of course, when we look at people who have had, depression, and postnatal depression in particular, what happens? Okay, they're very inward looking, and they're got heavy emotions, the guilt, the shame, the shock, all these grief, those things that come out because of the effects of the metals that are inside the bones. Fits, doesn't it? Yeah, I thought so too. And of course, they build up and they get worse and worse and worse unless we have the strong detoxification pathways to get these out. And then of course, with all these extra heavy metals, there is very little spiritual growth. It just builds up and we end up in cycles, getting worse and worse. Hang on, that sounds like people in depression, doesn't it? Yeah, funny that. So, it's taken me a while to work up the courage to do this video, because as I've got rid of stuff out of my body and dealt with my emotional effects and everything else, the questions and the answers to my questions have always been coming. People ask me, why am I so passionate about detoxing and cleansing and spiritual growth and natural health? It's because I receive so much love from my mother and that of Mother Nature. And the results have been vibrancy, never getting sick for the rest of this lifetime. Big deal, I know. But you clear enough stuff, it happens. And of course, longevity. Yeah, who knows how long we're living, but let's get past 100 by choice. But the biggest one, and I'm skirting around it, of course, is the biggest thing that got me onto this spiritual path and to taking extra beautiful care of myself and others is my mother. The embodiment of the divine feminine in my life, or the major part of it, chose, probably unwillingly, because she just didn't have a level of consciousness to be aware of these things, lifestyle choices that eventually led to her passing from cancer and leukemia, which essentially is cancer of the blood and cancer of the bone. what's stored in the bone and therefore gets released and tries to be, using the lymphatic system to come round to the heart and try to get released. Yeah, heavy metals and toxicity. So guess what? My mother had 4 beautiful children. Sisters, we got you. And of course, over time, with all that toxic heavy metals coming out, then the emotional effects were significant and had real flow-on effects throughout the whole family. And especially when someone has got so much toxic heavy metals within them, and then they're given they're not really given the choice, but they're told to put, leukemia and the cancer drugs in them, that have more toxic heavy metals in them, and then irradiate with radiation therapies. How can this be any sense of logic or heart-driven or care about anybody when people are doing this? And I mean, I've been dealing with this sort of stuff for 20 years, and my sisters have, in their own way, attempting to deal with it. And so the flow-on effects of this, even just within one person, but the flow-on effects within the family and society and community and universe and world at large are far out there massive. It's just, it boggles the mind, the flow-on effects. So if we can get rid of these toxic heavy metals, which, stored in the lymphatic system, and that means we're unable to receive love, so therefore we're unable to give it. I remember distinctly there was one particular instance or experience where my mum was, doing the normal thing, taking interferon, these drugs that, supposed doctors or who are not really healers give to people that are full of all sorts of nasty heavy metals and things. And she was a bit, scared. So she asked me to put this, the interferon drugs in the syringe. So I did that. You always want to help out mum. I was 17, and then she said, can you put it in my arm? And I couldn't do it. No, I mean, I wanted to help as much as I possibly could, because, hey, it's mum, right? But there's a distinct, no, I can't do this. And she had to do it herself, even though she was a bit wobbly, because she'd been drinking. Again, mixing alcohol with these sorts of things is never going to be helpful, absolutely. But that was her way of dealing with these things, because when we're caught up in the emotional effects of these significantly high levels of toxic heavy metals, it doesn't seem like there's a way out. How can we see the light and the light and be lightness within our body, both for natural health, a distinct, clear, clarity, conclusion, and a path on what to do, when we're clouded by toxic heavy metals? It's not possible. We actually have to take conscious steps to get rid of these things out of our body. Because, from the esoteric spiritual point of view, light and love coming through in through our bodies. What's the opposite of that? Dark and heavy metals. Yeah, simple, right? On a cellular level, if we've got heavy metals keeping our cells down and they're unable to vibrate or have a high level of homeostasis, they're unable to perturb, get a bit of pressure, and then get space. They're too down, they're too heavy, so it's not really possible. When it all comes through, it sounds simple, isn't it? And it is, in essence. Solutions are sweating, so Bikram yoga or a sauna or an infrared sauna at home are amazing. And of course, mum filtering out those for our children. They're stored down in the lower abdomen, so we can easily grab them and take them out with clays. If mum is filtering out the heavy metals for us, then Mother Nature can do the same with heavy metals, which draw out the toxic effects and the positive charge that they have, because Mother Nature obviously has a very negative charge and grounded. So anything that's heavy we can take out with us. So it all seems to fit in when you kind of put it all together. So, and of course, back to my mother thing, sisters, I'm gonna have to tell you, because we're gonna deal with it. It's the heavy metals that was the real cause, and stopped in the lymphatic system. Like we're told, the doctors will say it's this or that, but they don't have the clarity. They haven't taken the heavy metals out of themselves, so therefore they don't understand any, because they haven't experienced these things. And they're just operating in a conscious mind program from what they're told to do, and generally making money out of that. It's, from my point of view, morally reprehensible and disgusting. But that's mine. And when there are simple natural things that we can do to take these heavy metals out and reduce the significant amount of emotional effects, which are not easy to deal with. So why don't we just deal with the cause? It seems so much easier, because from my experiences, and I've seen and felt and all of the chaos and emotional turmoil that goes around from having, well, put it this way, if one hasn't had a mother in this lifetime for 20 years, then yeah, that's going to have some significant effects. And I was in a way lucky because I was at least 18, so I had a mother for 18 years, whereas my sisters didn't have that same amount of time. So can you imagine not having a mother in your teenage years? It's difficult, it certainly is, and there has to be a lot of soul searching and solutions found, and other ways to compensate. This is why I'm such a big fan of the Divine Feminine and Mother Nature. Another way to compensate from the lack of a maternal influence that's been my situation that I've got to deal with. So let's turn that into a positive. Here's the solutions. We can get rid of these problems. They're very simple protocols. We just need to make a few diet and lifestyle changes, and we can prevent all this stuff. Because we've known these things for centuries. Now we even have scientific proof in many different ways. It just depends on how much toxicity and heavy metals that person has within them to be allowed a different perspective. So there we go. That's about it that comes to me at this point. Yeah. So I guess that's my big vulnerability time. It feels actually good to get a bit of release from that. And so, the mother's love and the love of life and vitality can be simply improved by protocols that get rid of toxic heavy metals and the significant emotional effects on the body, mind and soul that these toxic metals have. So, let's get light and love.